Hi, everybody. So we are in week 7, and we had a great time with Paul Antonsen last week and saw some really neat things. I wanted to address something that he was talking about. I didn't want to interrupt him or be like a know-it-all or any of that about copyright, because it's a very confusing thing for people. And he didn't know either how it works or when you've infringed on somebody's copyright. So what I'd like to do is just give you right now a very short, you need to know these 3 things about copyright. And then I'm going to try to work it into the schedule. It's not really a part of this class, but it should be. And I think it's important. So when we have more time, we'll go into more nerdy detail. But for now, I want to share with you the 3 things that cause a copyright infringement. Okay, so these are what's known as those 3. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen with you. If we head over here to Canvas, here we go. Week 7. Okay, so right here. Okay, I put them right here. I just want to discuss with you. So here it is. Now, these are the 3 things. Of course, it's nuanced and detailed, but let's talk about the 3. So if your work meets all 3 requirements, you are not infringing on someone else's copyright. That's what this graphic is. Okay, so let's see, use work to comment on another body of work. So that's fair use. If you're doing a parody, an editorial, that's fine. If you needed to show Mickey Mouse, as part of the parody, but Mickey Mouse is wearing a chef's hat or whatever it is, that this is good. This is fine. Something like Mickey Mouse is very, very well known. And so when we get down to these 3 requirements, you'll see it says highly protected work must be highly different. This is in reference to very well-known things. Okay, everybody knows Mickey Mouse. We all know all the Disney stuff, right? And this is how copyright got so strict, is Disney's people were going for increased years. Copyright used to be a really brief amount of time, and it's much longer. And we'll talk about that another time and what happened, the history there. But they made that happen, mostly Disney. But a highly protected work must be highly different. So if we recognize it easily, then if you're doing something that's like it, it must be very different. Did the author take more than what was needed? You guys are the author, just to make that clear. In this case, you're the graphic designer, the illustrator, the artist. Okay. So did you take more than what you needed from it? And lastly, did the author hurt the market for the original? And a lot of times this answer is no, but you must meet all 3. So we'll talk just for a second. I'll give you an example. You guys remember Shepard Fairey's image of Obama, right? The Hope one. I think I have it right here. I should have thought of that before class. But I have, yeah, here it is. Okay, we're talking about this image, right? Now, this image was taken from a photo that was published, very known. It wasn't Disney known, but it was very known. It was seen, it was popular. And Shepard Fairey lost this case. He had to pay big time using this image the way he did, because he did not meet all 3 requirements. So highly protected work must be highly different. It's different. Is it highly different? Did author take more than what was needed? Not necessarily. Did author hurt market for original? No. What Shepard Fairey was missing was the first one. It wasn't different enough. Okay, it looks just like the photo, except that it's an illustration. Okay, any questions about those 3 criteria, what it means? And again, we'll go in more detail at another time when I've made room for it in our schedule. Okay, so I have this graphic for you. You don't even have to write it down if you don't want to. You can download it. It's in modules, week 7, all the way down here. And you'll see that I have a number of things for you today, but here is copyright infringement. You know what, I'm just gonna move that to the top because we covered it first. And then we will talk about some other things after. And this is your assignment. you have an exercise, a homework, and a discussion this week. So I told you guys to catch up on your sleep last week, remember? Okay, so stuff's going to start moving here. I would like to go back to the lecture that we were talking about before we got interrupted by Paul's electricity coming back on, which was great. I was so relieved because I had all this ready, but I hadn't really looked it over. I wasn't expecting to have to talk about it. So I'm much more prepared this time, although I don't think I was ill prepared last time because I know this stuff pretty well. So we were talking about these images, and I wanted to give you a little bit of vocabulary on what we call these types of, we're going to call it movement, okay, the effect, motion effects, okay? So there are 6 that we will be talking about today. This is the first one, and it's called the kapow, or last week I called it the bam. Okay, so it's not a real word necessarily, but it's the kapow. It's a thing that happens suddenly and quickly. And we already talked about these 3 last week. So if you need a review on that, you can, of course, rewatch the first few minutes of our video. I think it was just the first 6 minutes, and then he came back to us. But that is the kapow. Works really well for sudden, violent acts of motion. Okay, any questions about the kapow? All right. The next one that I would like to talk to you about, we'll just start over here at the top. This one is the slow motion phases. So you can see in slow motion how this person is doing this backwards flip, landing, and then gaining control again. Okay, and at the very end is grounded. Okay, so this is slow motion phases, and a slow motion phase shows the major parts of the movement, but all of them, okay, individually. So you can follow the story. A lot of times this will happen where it's faded, and then at the very end is where it's solid. This is an important thing to note, because when you guys are showing motion of something moving, keep in mind that the solid is where it ends, not where it begins. Okay, so the solid is the most recent in time, which would be the end of the motion. Any questions about that? Last semester, people were doing it the other way. They were starting with solid, and then it would fade out as it got to wherever it was. Like, for example, if you were throwing something across the room, the initial throw is transparent. Where it hits the wall is solid. Okay, I just want to make that clear. There was a source of some confusion last semester about it. So that's your slow motion phases. Go over to this one here. So this one is, I would call this one, wait, did I write it down? The after image. Okay, so what happens on an after image is it's similar to the slow motion phases, only we see it all on top of each other. So we see all that happened here. Let me show you another after image. This one, turning the car key. Okay, we see it's like slow motion phases, but on top of itself. It's like it was moving so fast, we saw the after image of it. Okay, let me go to my other page here because I have some other examples of that, of the after image. Okay, this is somewhere between slow motion phases and the after image, but I'm just gonna call this slow motion phases because it's really not on top of each other. It's overlapping a bit. All right, any questions on the after image? Okay. And we have here the blur. Okay, so that's another one. That's I think the third one that we're getting to. So the blur is, it doesn't necessarily have to be blurry. You can see what's happened here. The idea is that the image is not solid anymore. It's not perfectly clear. So we call it the blur, but it could also just be a something falling apart, right? And as it was moving. All right, now this one happens to use arrows, which I just want to make sure you all understand that arrows are not permitted in this assignment. You're not allowed to use an arrow. An arrow is a stick with a triangle head of some kind. Okay, we'll talk about motion lines, which is the closest thing to arrows, but we will not be using arrows. Arrows are trite and overused, and I would like you to start thinking about showing motion in ways that other people don't usually do it in, so that your portfolio stands out. Okay, everyone else graduating from American River College and Sierra College, they're going to have arrows. You guys are going to have after image, slow motion phases, right? Motion lines, kabams, all right? Much more exciting. Okay. And this is what I would call motion lines. And this happens to be in the shape of a flame. So we get it really quickly. You know, this is like a hot rod, fast car. It's almost like fire shooting out the back, right? But this is actually, these are motion lines coming out from behind it. It's also kind of a blur in that the back of the car is missing, but this is another way to show it. Here's another slow motion phases, only this one doesn't really use transparency, but we show all the steps so you can follow each one like as a story arc. Starts here, then this happened, then this happened. All right, here's another one that's motion lines, but it is different. So this also uses line to show the motion. It doesn't have arrowheads, which is great, but you'll see that it's rounded on the ends and it's slightly curved. And that way your eye can complete what happens here. We're able to understand that it's coming at a curved angle to hit. Okay, this is the closest that you'll get to an arrowhead. This would be the second most overused way to show motion are the lines, the motion lines, but I'll allow you to use it because I told you you couldn't use arrowheads. I don't want to make life impossible. I'm not a monster, you guys. I'm gonna make this a little bit easier for you. Okay, and then here's some really great motion lines. Let me see if I can back out of this. Yeah, that I found online. And this is a lot more exciting as well. And you can see that some of them go from thick to thin. Some of them have a little bit of a wave to it, like something jumped. There's lots of different ways to do it. If you want to take a screenshot of this so that you have it, you know, it's just reference. I know you look at it, you think, oh, I'll just make that later. I get it. But then we forget the nuances of how cool these lines are, like how this one is perfectly straight, but it's got, you know, a thick to thin happening, and it happens at different angles. It almost makes an arrowhead here, but it's actually headed to the right. Okay, remember I told you that it's transparent on the ends, and most recently it's solid. So this is an object moving to the right. I'm not sure with this one, this may be moving to the right, but it's a curved object. Okay, but whenever it fades out like this, this is the opposite direction that it's going. This one is also going to the right. This is going to the right. This is interesting because this could be going to the left. It's not, I realize it's thicker on this end and it seems more transparent there. I think this one could go either way. It depends what's happening. This would be in a situation where it was going away from you. And that's why it's getting thinner on the ends. But I think that could go either way. See, there's exceptions to all of this. It depends on the context that you're using it. Okay, and let me go to my other document here. Okay, so you guys know this is the kablam, right? This one is the lines, right? The motion lines. This has a double set of motion lines to emphasize that there are two things moving. So does this one. And it shows how the butterfly moves versus how the person is moving, right? So keep in mind, it's not only one thing moving all the time. Sometimes it's several things. I think Robin is doing the smoothie and you've got the whirling blade. Okay, a blade usually has 4 sides to it, and she's going to need a motion for each one of those blades to show that it's whirling. Okay, because it's 4 pieces going. Okay, this here is these lines that we see here, and the repetition of it, like the after image, is called quiver lines. And a quiver line is going very fast. Okay, an after image may be going fast, may not be going that fast. It's not going slowly, but this is super fast. So if you combine the motion lines with the after image, you get what's called quiver lines. And you can see not the entire hand is repeated here, just the fingertips. Okay. And the last one that we have is the blur, which I don't think I have an example of the blur, do I? Oh, I did. Yeah, here, the blur. It's not blurry, but yeah, I think you guys get the picture here with that one. And then I have this one here, which is, these are motion lines, but they're just done super fancy. And this is coming from far away. How do we know? It's real tiny here, just like perspective. When things get further away from you, they're smaller, closer up, they're larger. So this is coming from far away, thrown very far away. Like it's way out there and it's coming right past us. Okay, so the ones that I covered, we have the kapow, the motion lines, right? Motion lines, the quiver lines with this hand, the after image, like that, the slow motion phases, and the blur. Okay, so those are the 6. If you know of any other cool movement thing category that I haven't covered, I would love for you to send me a message and let me know so I can cover it. Okay, so are these images available on Canvas? No, I can put them on Canvas if you like. Are quiver lines different from motion lines? Yeah, they are, because they also combine the after image. Let me go back to my quiver line. This is for Apollo here. Okay, so my quiver lines are combined with an after image, and the after image is really loose. All right. So it's a little bit nuanced. So quiver lines can indicate more precise back and forth motion. So it's not someone coming across the page. That would just be probably motion lines or slow motion or after image. But this is, this movement, or anybody who's using a whisk on an egg, that would use quiver lines, right? That back and forth motion. I'm trying to think of your guys' themes and what would fit in for quiver lines. If you have any ideas, put it in the chat. If you think of your theme, where might you use quiver lines? It'd be great if you could just put that in the chat for us to see. Okay. All right. So that is movement. Any questions about that? Those 6? All good? I just want to take a drink of water. Okay, let's move on. All right, because I got a lot to cover here. I'm going to go over to Illustrator, and I want to talk about some tools that you can use that will make this easier for you. Before we go much further, I do want to remind you that our assignment this week is to do one excellent illustration. It needs to be one with motion. It doesn't have to be your first one. It could be any one of them. Okay, you guys took pictures last week, so you should be ready to go and what this might look like. So you're going to do one with motion, which is why I'm focusing on that. Okay. Let me go over to Illustrator. Here we go. I'm going to go over here first. Okay, so I want to talk about some tools that you can use to do this. Now, the demonstration I'm going to do right now is a blur, but this could be a slow motion phases one as well. Okay, so let me just start with this. I realize this looks like a very weird demo here. I have these 2 rectangles, and I want to talk to you about how to make a swoopy line like that fades out. And we're going to use the blend for that. If you guys remember that, it used to be a blend tool. It's now called the blend. So I have these 2. Let me just make them, I'm just going to line them up a little bit better to each other. Let me click a line and do that. Good. Okay. And I'm going to go under Object to Blend. And I can check out my options, or I can just click Make and change it later. All of these options are changeable later. So let me go ahead and click Make. And what you'll see is that, let me change the color. Illustrator blends it from one shape to another. Now these are the same exact shapes, so it really didn't seem like it did much, but let me go ahead in here and change the opacity to 50%. And what you'll see now is that our first rectangle and our last rectangle have in between shapes, and that's the blend. Now, I'd like this to be a little bit smoother, so I'm going to select it. and go back under object to blend. And I want to go to the options and see what I can do. So in my options, I found just playing today and getting ready for today that in this particular instance, specified distance works really well because I have this very small amount in here. And this is the distance between each little rectangle. I could do specified steps and say, I'll do 150 steps, right? The more steps, the smoother it is. As you guys can see now, it looks like a gradient, okay? But what you can do here that you cannot do with a gradient, because you guys know you can do that with a gradient, right? Just orange to 50% orange. What you can do with the blend is you can take your pen tool features here. I'm going to take my anchor point tool, which is how we convert, and I can make this curve. So you guys know that this symbol is the one responsible for converting points. And I can go ahead and convert this point into a curve. I can convert this one into a curve as well. Okay, and I can move that around so that it's doing something different. I can, with my direct selection tool, select the very last one. Remember, I only drew two, the first and the last. Those are the only ones I can actually select. I can select that and make it say opacity 0 so that it looks like the blur, right? And now you can imagine that if I selected this and I had less of these, so let me go back under object blend and go to blend options, and my specified steps, let's say, are 8. Okay, you can see those, and I could make this a slow motion blur, I'm sorry, yeah, the slow motion phases by changing 1, right? And it shows how it changes. Okay, now I'm going to undo that, but I just wanted to show you how we could do those two. Okay, slow motion phases and the motion blur. Let me undo to get it back where it was, because I have more to talk about with this. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and release this. So object, blend, release. And I want to talk to you about doing it with more than just 2 objects. So in order not to lose this little guy here, and by the way, if you do lose it, under your view menu, you have your outline view, just Command Y or Control Y on the PC, and it just shows you everything in a wireframe. So you can pick it in case you lost it. So I use that frequently. The shortcut is just Command Y. So if I lose something, I just hit Command Y and I can find it. Maybe you forgot about that, or maybe I never covered it in the beginning class, but it's very useful. So let me go back over here, and I am going to make this a 75% opacity. I'm going to make this one 50%. And this is going to be the one that's 0. But for now, I'm just going to make it 5 so I can at least find it there. I don't know if you guys can see, it's very light. All right, so I can select all 4 of these. Let me get rid of this path here. You know, when I released it, it left a bit, it left that path, and then it also left where I was playing. Here it is. I've been making sure this works before I show it to you all. So I can select all 4 of those and do object blend, make. Okay, and now these are specified steps. So let me go ahead and increase that. I'll go back under object blend options, and I'll change it to specified distance because I already had that kind of set up. But if you want to do smooth color, it's not very smooth. I will do specified distance. And you'll notice too that I've chosen for orientation this one. Now, if you look at the image here, you can see the difference. In this one, if I had chosen this one, they all stay upright. And this, you know, in this one, they will curve along with any of the curves, or they turn on their own with it. So in orientation to the line, so the distance between here and here, it's lining up. These are just how you see it, just these straight ones. If I click on this one, it turns as the line turns. Okay, I don't know if you can see the difference between those two, but this is the better one to use in this particular situation. Let me click OK, and I realize it doesn't look great yet. Well, there's some fixing that needs to happen. So I will need my anchor point tool, and I'm going to add some curve to this. It always makes it smoother. A little bit of curve there. Okay, and I can decide that, you know, something is coming from one place to the other. Let's go ahead and make this 0 like I wanted to begin with. Okay, that might look smoother. If you'd like this to fade out sooner, keep in mind that you have these 4. So you can find the one in between here that is at 75%. And I could say, well, let's make that 25%. So it fades sooner. This one is 50. So that one should be 100. And this one should be the 50. Okay. Or if I didn't want to fade out that quickly, maybe I do, 70 or 75. And what happens here is it's all adjustable with your direct selection tool. That's very important to remember. You cannot use your selection tool on this. If you use your selection tool on it, it all moves together. Okay. But your direct selection tool will allow you to pick up pieces and curves to make some changes. Okay. So I can have this turn and twist any way I like. I can make this longer here, right? That doesn't look as good to me. And the other thing I can do too is if I want this to look like it's come out of, a really small place, like far away, I'm going to go ahead and make this guy much, much smaller, right? So it's coming from a smaller space and getting larger. And then this can be really any shape I want for it coming at me, right? This is the end of it. Okay. Any questions about that? This is a really good technique for any of you guys who are putting something in a bowl, right? You're putting it in a blender. You can show all of your ingredients at the same time going into the blender. They all need this type of blend, the blur, motion blur behind it. And that is so much better than an arrow. It is so much more interesting and less heavy-handed. An arrow is heavy-handed. Okay, so this is a softer way of doing it. This is a completely different motion than putting something in a bowl. This is something kind of spiraling and maybe firework or something that's one of those twisty ones that go up. Okay. Any questions about the blend tool and how we worked that? All right. So, and just to emphasize here, I had 4, and each one is for a turn. To start, first turn, second turn, last at the very end. So you need for each of those turns. If you're just having something just arcing into a bowl, you only need 2, the beginning and the end. But the trick here is to get this tool right here, the anchor point tool, to convert it into a curve. Otherwise, you're just straight paths that it follows. All right, cool. No questions, right? You guys are so quiet today. Nothing, huh?
I'm having technical difficulties, so I'm trying to moderate, I'm testing my Wi-Fi speed on my computer. I'm on my phone right now, so it's a little bit hard to track.
Okay. All right. Are any of you guys doing this along with me? I'm just wondering, or you are, okay. Sometimes it's hard to do it along because you want to get it, you want to do it, like you want to make it, watch it happen. And then I'll be moving on and you get left behind. So I just want to give you a second here to catch up if you were trying that out, or put it to the side and then come back with me because we're about to go into the next very, very cool feature that Illustrator has for motion. Okay, it's actually, it's not traditionally, it's the Puppet. It's called the Puppet Warp tool. And it's not traditionally used for motion, but I think it does a really good job of it if we're doing the after image. Okay, so let me take you over there. Let's go back over here and I want to go right there. Okay, so the Puppet tool, which I don't know if you knew it was here, it looks like a little thumbtack. It's underneath the free transform tool. It's a Puppet Warp tool. Okay, and the Puppet Warp tool is very cool. Let's see, why am I not, I must be on the wrong layer. Nope, I don't have a layer problem here. What am I doing wrong, you guys? Okay, there we go. I don't know, I was selected on something weird. It wasn't working. It should be fine for you though. You're not going to run into that. So I have my bird. You have to select something first. That's what I was doing wrong. So I have this little bird here. Let me get her. And I have the word bird, and this is my branch. And the thing is that sometimes we draw things. Let me get closer. And we're drawing the bird because we're tracing it, or this is the image we had in our mind. And this bird is standing. This bird is not on a stick yet. Okay, the feet need to be different. to be able to stand on a stick. So let me just back out a little bit here. So we can't just take the bird and plop it down on the stick. That is not how birds stand on sticks, right? This looks just like one thing pasted on top of the other. So the puppet warp tool will help you with this type of thing. So let me select it. I'm going to get my puppet warp tool and I'm going to zoom in a bit here over to the feet. Here are my feet. And the way this tool works is you have here a point that stays still. Now you can add a point, like I could put it right here to this part of the toe just by clicking. And I could put it here on the very tip of the toe. And those points are the ones that you move or they stay still. Okay, so if I grab this now, I can bend this around. Okay, I can grab this one here, try to make that curve a little bit more. Right, I can add a point here and curl that around. I need a separate one maybe for this toe to move it. Right, and I would need to work at this a little bit. There's also the ability, let me get closer. Each one of these has, you might see this very little dotted line around it. If you drag that, you can rotate. So I can select this one. I can rotate the little toe. Oh, I think I made a second one. Hold on. There we go. Whoops. Now I'll show you how to get around this in a second here. You'll notice that when you rotate one, the other stuff is coming along, but the ones that have the thumbtack circles on it are staying still. Okay, so these are for moving things and for keeping it still. Now, if I put a thumbtack all along this leg, it will stay still when I move this, right? Okay, I'm going to undo that. Just Command Z it because there's a better way to do this. Yeah. Instead, if you would like to move just the one, if you hold down Option or Alt on your keyboard, it should move just the toe, and it doesn't always work for some reason. I'll show you when it works. It did this before to me too, where it would work sometimes and not others, but it's not doing what I said. Hold on to that thought. I'm going to show you. It seems to like it when I do the head. It moves separately from the rest of it. I don't know why that's not working, but the idea is, and you try it on your own, hold down Option or Alt, and it makes it so that you're only moving this one piece. And you can see that's not what's happening here. Maybe they're all selected. So let's see if I can just select that one, hold down Option or Alt. Here we go. Now I'm moving just the one, pretty much. Okay, if I let go of Option or Alt and I move the one, no, it was just a good example. It didn't work at all. Ignore me. All right, so I'm going to curve this a little bit too to kind of get it under. And then remember, you want to go back to your regular selection tool, your direct selection tool, to then tweak how this sits. But I'm going to say that the bird looks a lot more like it's holding onto the branch now, right? Okay, so let's talk about this here. And then I'll talk about slow motion or the after image in a second, how this would work well for after image. So here's my bird. I'm going to get my puppet warp tool. And right now, because automatically it'll give you some of these little thumbtack, these little circles on there. I'm not sure what they're called, but this is your point of control. So it put it right there. It tries to guess. So if I would like to say, bend the head forward, I can select it and I can rotate so that it's looking down. Isn't that adorable? I could drag it so that it's sad. Okay, it's all hunched in or it's cold. Let me undo that. And I might want to put some other points in here. So like, let me put one on the belly, because when I move this, the belly tends to get, smaller, and I still want my nice belly. So I'm going to leave that there. And let me try this. I'm going to hold Option. Well, I'm going to make the belly fatter. And then I'm going to move this over. Okay, it's kind of a different bird now. But it's super fun, by the way. Once you start doing this, you're like moving stuff around. So here is a good way. If we wanted to show, I'm undoing, that the bird is looking sad, like is putting its head down in sadness here. What I'm going to do first is I am going to select the bird and do a copy, paste in front. And paste in front puts it just exactly, a copy of it exactly on top of the one I have here. And you probably remember that from your first illustration class. So with this copy, I am going to go to my transparency here. I'm going to make it more transparent. Let's try 60%. You can't see anything yet because it's on top of the other one. And I'll get my Puppet Warp tool and I'm going to do my first one of these. Okay, so you can see the transparency now. Okay, I'll just move it a little bit. All right, now with this one selected, you guys can see where I'm going. I will do another copy and a paste in front, and it will copy and paste the most recent one, for which I will make even lighter. And I'll get my Puppet Warp tool and I'll make it even more sad. Okay, or maybe what happened, it was sad and now it's perking up. I might want to move in the belly or however we want to do it. Maybe I add a point here so I can give it a little bit of a hunched back so it looks even more like it's, you know, hunched over. And let's do it one more time. So I have it selected. I'm going to do a copy and then a paste in front, make that one even more light. Okay, we've got 10%. And I'll do my last one. So I'll get my Puppet Warp tool and I will just make it a tiny bit sadder. Okay, let me click off of this so you guys can see what's going on here. I would get rid of the eyes in this case. It really is not necessary. And you can see it's distracting, the eyes there. So with my direct selection tool, I'm gonna grab that eyeball. Whoops, I think I deleted the whole thing, didn't I? Yep. Let me get that guy. Get this one. And I wish I had done this beforehand, before I made all these copies, but you guys get the point. It's gonna take me some time to find it in there. I think I also deleted one of my copies in the meantime, but this is a super fun thing to do. If you have a character that you've already drawn or that you want to be just in a different mood or looking up, turning, all those things can happen. This is an incredible tool that got added just a couple of versions ago, just a couple of years ago. That is fascinating and very cool. So this is a great example of the after image, right? It's like lifting its head. Remember, the most recent one is the darkest and the past is see-through, right? It's transparent. So this is actually looking up. The eyeballs are driving me nuts, but you get it. In terms of it being able to fly and take off, we're going to need a new one. We're going to need one with wings. I mean, we can't generate it from what we don't have. We can take what we have and bend it. You want to think of it that way. We can grow it. Maybe it's getting fatter and fatter because it's enjoying its birdseed so much. I mean, these are things we can do with it, but we can't generate an object that's not there, like wings. Even though wings have been drawn, we're going to need another one of these that's taking off. Okay, any questions about that? Very cool feature. Okay. One more thing, because I have my notes here. Let's select it. I'm going to get rid of my copies. It looks like I kept the eyes though. The one thing I wanted to get rid of, I couldn't get rid of. Let's get rid of those eyes. Okay, here's my little bird. I did want to show you there's some things for you in here. Let me get rid of that. I didn't need that at all. If you go to your properties palette, this is one that we really don't look at very often. This is where you're going to find Puppet Warp options. I have no idea why it's in here. You might also find it in your control panel at top. Mine's not showing it. You know, sometimes that control panel shows you exactly what you want. Sometimes it doesn't. It's not right now, but your properties palette will always show it to you. All right, so here it is. And we can select all the pins if we'd like to, do something all at once, like move the whole bird. Okay. We can expand the mesh. What that means is you see how it's outside of the area of my bird. I can make that, let's just say, bigger, and it will behave differently now when I select this one and I turn it. You can see it moved. I don't have anything to compare it to because I deleted those other ones, but this is expand mesh, something I've never had to do yet. So let me know if you find a use for it. Remember, this is a pretty new feature. I mean, most of the stuff I show you guys, I've been using for 20 plus years. This is new to me. And this is only a couple of years that I've been playing with this. And I am still waiting for like a real world project where I need it. All right, so that's what's in there. And you can, okay, I want to get to the words. Here we go. All right, so you know how to add pins. You can hide the mesh by clicking off of it or clicking here. Let me go back down. Right here, hide mesh, show mesh. And let's talk about words, because this could get pretty fun as well. Move that over. Okay, back out. Here we go. So my word here, and this works, I did create outlines, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. You can do this with completely intact type. I just get worried about the restrictions of having it be vector type as opposed to a vector object. But what we can do here is we can get our Puppet Warp tool, and there are things about it that we can change. So you can see that we can alter our type in some interesting or not so interesting ways. Let me select this one. That's the rest of it. Let's get this. The eye, get my warp tool here. Okay. I can, you got to play with it. I was hoping that it would have less on here. So if you don't like them, you can click on it, press delete. Okay, if you just want, like, for example, I'm going to delete all of these except for that one in the corner. I'm just pressing delete on my keyboard. Now, when I use it, whoops, when I use it, I am rotating the letter. It's kind of hanging from that piece. Okay, so that's, I mean, you can rotate a letter anyway, but you can also rotate it differently. Okay, so it gets a little distorted here, but you'll need to play with it. Just keep in mind that this is a way of selecting very specific places and being able to alter it that way. Instead, if I wanted to do this to the B, where this belly grew out that way, that would take me a lot longer. I'd have to move each of these little points, you know, to get it to be as fat as I wanted. I'd probably have to play with some handles. The Puppet Warp tool does it without any of that. Okay, let me stop sharing. All right, so that's the Puppet Warp tool. I think it's going to help you this week. Think about your task, your simple task, and one of the steps that definitely has motion, right? You have an exercise this week on the Puppet Warp tool where you can use an object that you've made for your simple task, like an illustration that you've made for it. And I ask you to do at least 4, it's going to be a after image. So I ask you to do at least 4 copies of it so we can see the movement. And then I'll show you this last one here, sample for turning the key. You guys remember this one. So what I did here is, this is actually, I just traced over it, the whole outline of it, okay? Just like the eye, we do not need all these creases and shadows and things like that on it for it to work. So with this selected, I can get my Puppet Warp tool, and I want to show the motion of the key turning. So that's going to require me to move some things. If I'm turning it to the right, you know, I'm going to want to do something more like that. Okay, and then I'll do my copy paste on top. So just Command C, Command F, and I will go at it with my Puppet tool again to show this. I think the hand needs to move a little bit more over here to get that twisting. Okay, so you want to think about the parts that change. You know, you might want to do it yourself and see what happens. You know, the wrist moves. So maybe this was too far. Let me get that wrist to come back over here. You know, the wrist mostly twists. It doesn't actually move out of place. Okay, and then, you know, you'll want to do a few of these to show that motion. Okay, so this is actually a real illustration from 2019. Someone who took this class, and they did how to start a car, I think, or how to get it out of park. Something, you know, a simple task, not how to learn, not how to do stick shift driving or anything like that. But this was one of the steps to turn the car on. Okay, All right. I'd like to show you a couple of instances of where students have done this work so that you can get some ideas of what their work looked like. Let me go back over to here. Hold on. Oh, no. It's under book 4. Here we go. So let me open this one up for you. All right. So this is how to make s'mores. This was last semester's book. A couple of things I want to point out. We're going to be talking about this today, how to set up the pages. So we're doing this in Illustrator. If you want, when we're done, you can bring these illustrations into InDesign if you'd rather set it up there, that kind of thing. But for now, just go ahead, keep illustrating in Illustrator. Keep in mind that your back page and your front page are usually on the same sheet of paper when we print it, because these will be printed and bound, and you'll be taking photos of it to turn in. This is end of semester, so please don't panic yet. But how to make s'mores. Okay, so here's her pattern that she made after the lecture, Paul Antonson's lecture. And here are some really interesting moments. Okay, so she used motion lines. This is the part you can probably tell where you pull the stick out. And this is not page 2, you guys. This is set up in printer spreads, which we're going to talk about today as well. So this is not in order, but I think this is actually page 2. So we have the snap, so you can show sound as well. I mean, this is motion because they snapped, and it's also sound. So that's the popping, snapping feeling that happens. This one is a slow motion phases for putting the chocolate onto the cracker, right? And then over here, we have the after image. It's kind of between a slow motion phase and an after image of putting the top on to the marshmallow. Here's the motion of the blowing, right? Puckering up and blowing. And then this is, remember, it's not in order. This is taking it off. So we have motion lines. And here is the spinning. Okay, when you put it over the fire and you turn, so it doesn't catch on fire. Mine always catch on fire. Okay, and then not everything has to be moving. You can see there were some where it's just completely still. And that's okay too. In your book, you need at least 2 instances, 2 illustrations that have motion to it. That's a minimum. Here she's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, in her book. Any questions about this before I close this one?
How do you make the snapping sound to show?
Well, in hers,
Oh yeah, there. Oh yeah. I see.
yeah, it's just motion lines. But what's different about this is how they are in a radial formation, because noise emanates from one small spot and then comes out. You know, if you think of a megaphone, how it opens up. So when you do this type of thing to show sound, it would be in this radial formation to show a snap. It's also showing, it kind of does double duty here. It makes me think of the snap sound, and it also makes me think of the motion of the snap. Okay, but the snap actually happened here, like between the two, and that's not exactly shown. So there's a little room for improvement here on how we could do that. Maybe it's just the placement of these 2 that needed to change. Maybe it needed to be at the corners. I don't know, I'd have to play.
There's 2, just put 1 in the middle.
1 in the middle. Yeah, maybe, or 1 at the top, 1 at the bottom. I mean, you'd have to play with it to see how that would work. Any other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Also want to point out, as long as I'm still here, how this is being, this is being pulled out. It's not being shoved in. And we know that because it's thinner when it's older, typically. All right, so that's how we know it's out. This is actually something we talked about in the class. She had it the other way around originally. And so when something is being pulled out as opposed to being put in, that's where that thickness and the fading away is very important, so that we know which way it's going. You guys didn't see this as being shoved in, right? It's being pulled out. But originally, when it was the other way, it was a little confusing. Okay, we know that the chocolate is coming from this hand and settling down on the cracker because it is solid on the cracker. It is the most recent in time. Okay, just wanted to show you that in use. Okay, we'll get to that in a second here. This is basically what I showed from the blend that we did earlier. I'm just showing you a comparison of how you can do this. Let me go back over to here. Okay. And this one, also from last semester, is how to borrow a book from the library. And you'll see that not all of them are motion. That's the cover. And here's the first spread. Here's her, these are called the end pages where she has her patterns. You know, nothing's really yet moving. We know they're walking because we can see the bottom of the shoe. So she's picking out, she's got her card, she's picking out her book. And here's where the motion starts happening. That's a little bit more dramatic. It doesn't always have to be this dramatic, you guys. It, you know, over here where they were walking, this still is showing motion in some way. Like we know which way they're going. We know they're moving because of the feet. We know they're not just standing still holding hands. Okay, so it doesn't have to always be so dramatic, but I did want to show you the methods. So here she is handing the books to the librarian to be scanned. We know that because it's transparent here and it's solid here. This is the librarian. You can tell because her skin is different. She has painted nails. This is the librarian who is scanning it over the sensor, right? That's the center. And then here she is leaving the library. We know she's moving because again, the feet, right? And her legs are in motion. And this is her like getting sucked into the world of whatever this book is about. So this is her reading it. So it doesn't have to be super literal. It doesn't have to then show her reading the book now that she checked it out. We could get a little bit more abstract here and just show what's going, you know, through her mind. And now she is returning the book. And here is the back side of it. Backside is always hard for people. What should I put on the backside? It might be a rejected illustration from the inside. Sometimes that happens. In this case, that's what this was. Okay. Those are the two that I want to show you. You know, in the past we've done this assignment for a while and there's some interesting things, but the students never really showed the motion in, you know, in an interesting way. It's always just like the steps as if they were caught at the very moment, like a photograph. These do, but you know, anyway, those are different student ones. Let me stop sharing and I'm going to stop recording.